Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 7th edition of Dementia Talks Canada, presented by the Alzheimer Society of Canada in partnership with Brain Canada. Each month, Dementia Talks features a conversation on a topic related to dementia involving people who have direct firsthand experience. My name is Melissa Russo, and my everyday role is as a program manager at Brain Canada, but today I'll also be serving as the moderator for this talk. I would like to extend a sincere thank you to you, our viewers, for taking the time to join us for this meaningful conversation on art and dementia. Let's cover a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being offered both in English and French. To select a language, you can click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and then choose the English or French language. You'll also notice that poll questions will occasionally pop up on your screen throughout the session, and we ask that you answer those whenever possible. This session is also being recorded, but please note that only the video and audio of the panelists and the moderator is being captured in the recording. Finally, while some time today will be dedicated to a fulsome discussion between our amazing panelists, all audience members will have the opportunity to have their questions answered towards the end of the hour. Any comments or questions can be sent to our panelists through the Q&A feature on your Zoom control panel. Next, I'll go over a bit of information about the organizations partnering to host these monthly webinars. The Alzheimer Society is Canada's leading nationwide health charity for people living with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Active in communities across Canada, the Society provides information, programs, and services to those living with a diagnosis and their caregivers. The Alzheimer Society Research Program is Canada's leading funder of research into better understanding the causes of dementia, improving treatment and care, and ultimately towards finding a cure. Brain Canada Foundation is a national registered charity that plays a unique and invaluable role as a national convener of the community of those who support and advance brain research. A greater understanding of how the brain works will contribute to the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and cure of disorders of the brain, thereby improving the health outcomes of people in Canada. Brain Canada's main areas of focus are fundraising, granting, and strengthening of the brain research community. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that the offices of Brain Canada Foundation are located on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Ganyan-Gehaga peoples, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. We honor and pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging, and dedicate ourselves to moving forward in the spirit of partnership, collaboration, and reconciliation in our work. We focus our efforts on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, numbers 19 to 24, that pertain to improving health for Indigenous peoples, and on number 57, that focuses on advancing our learning on Indigenous issues. Our team is sharing a link to all of the calls to actions in the chat right now, and we urge you to take a look at them. Now, as I previously mentioned, the topic of Dementia Talks Canada today is art and dementia, and I'm honored to be joined by 5 individuals who bring unique perspectives and knowledge on this topic. Full transparency on my end here, my research background was in the behavioral neuroscience, and I have to admit that I don't have direct expertise on today's topic. But with that said, I'm really looking forward to learning from our excellent speakers today alongside our viewers. To do our quick introductions and start off by thanking all of our panelists and speakers for joining us today, I'd like to introduce Kevin Whitaker. Kevin is an artist who lives with Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease. And Kevin is joined by Marie Mulliner, his partner and caregiver. Kevin and Marie are both subjects of the new short documentary titled Still Headroom, Parkinson's and the Power of Care, as well as the 2018 short documentary titled Chasing Monsters, Parkinson's and the Power of Art. Kevin's 9th art exhibition opens this coming weekend at Back Lane Studios in Toronto, and we've just put a link in the chat with all of the details about this show. Next, we have Sarah Leavitt, who is the author of Tangles, a story about Alzheimer's, my mother, and me, and who is also an assistant professor in the School of Creative Writing at the University of British Columbia. Tangles uses comics to tell the story of Sarah's mother, Midge, who at the age of 54 was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 1999 and lived with the disease for 6 years. Tangles is now in production as a feature-length animation. For more information about this remarkable book and story, you can click on the link shared in the chat. Next, we have Dr. Dalia Gottlieb-Tanaka, who is the author of Creativity, Dementia, and the Therapeutic Environment, as well as the chair of the Society for Arts in Dementia Care. You can learn more about the society by having a look at the link in the chat. Dalia co-authored the Creative Expressive Abilities Assessment Tool, which is designed for obtaining in-depth information about the expressive abilities of seniors with dementia. She also helped found the Creative Expression Activities Program and the conferences on creative expression, communication, and dementia. Last, but certainly not least, we have Dr. Sherry Dupuis, who was a member of the research team for the theater piece called Cracked, New Light on Dementia, which you can also find in our chat stream now. Dr. Dupuis is currently the current co-director of the Partnerships in Dementia Care Alliance, as well as a professor and research chair at the University of Waterloo. Sherry's research, including Re-imagining Dementia through the Arts, uses art forms to challenge the stigma associated with dementia and to change how we think about and approach leisure and the arts in the dementia context. All right, time to jump right into our session today. Kevin and Marie have taped answers to some questions in advance. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that a couple of weeks ago. We know that energy levels can vary when living with dementia, so just the forethought to put this together is really appreciated. I think it'll be really a treat for the audience as well to not only hear from you both about your lived experience, but to also witness some of the beautiful art that you've created, Kevin. So we'll start with that now. It's about 5 minutes long. Can we roll that video, please?
Okay, so we are Saturday, November 12th, and here you are sitting amidst your paintings. I'm going to do a little video for the Alzheimer Society so that they can show the world the power of art when you have a disease like dementia or Alzheimer's. How's that sound?
That's good.
And you are?
Kevin.
Kevin Whitaker, painter, and what did you do before?
I was a labor lawyer and a judge at the Superior Court of Ontario.
Yes, you were very well respected. So we're going to move into the conversation that makes us both happy, conversation about art. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about these prints of your work, because you've been painting now as a professional for about 4 years, raising money for Parkinson's and dementia. Yep. And one of the questions that we want to discuss is, how has making art helped you?
It makes me, it makes me feel like I don't have to worry about how I feel.
That's pretty powerful. Okay, so we're now looking at Jewel Box Bunny, which, if I remember correctly, was a bit of a portrait of me.
Yeah.
And what is it that reminds you of me in this?
You're charged. You're happy. Warm.
A bit dangerous?
A bit dangerous, not overly dangerous.
Okay, so we're now going to talk a little bit about what you hope people take away, and I know you have really good views about this. What do you hope people take away from your paintings and your art practice?
Well, I think that one of the things they'll take away is that they'll have a different view of what they think I am as a person. Because I can't see that all of this stuff was expressed before I was sick. Mm-hmm. But now, this is the guards are away.
The guards are away.
Yep.
Interesting, as in the overseers?
Yeah, that's right.
So you have no filters?
That's right.
Ha, yeah, well, when you're a labor lawyer, Labor chair of the board and judges. There's a few filters. Yep. So this is one of your favorite paintings.
Yep.
This is, I think it's called Venetian Sunglasses.
That's right.
And one of the things that I want to ask you is about, what do you wish people knew more about in terms of the diseases that you are living with every day? So that's dementia and Parkinson's, Lewy body dementia in particular. Anything in particular that you want to tell people about in terms of what you wish people in Canada knew more about in terms of art and dementia?
It's a tough one. Such a deeply part of my...
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is about art therapy in particular and how it can help people and how it's helped you. And if you were to, relive your life and have, as you have said in the past, if you'd taken up painting, you might never have become a judge. So now that what is it that art gives you that you would like other people to hear about?
I think it gives me permission to think about things in a different fashion, from a different perspective.
And why is that good?
Well, it's good because it gives me a broader understanding of who I am, and a broader understanding always has to be better than the last understanding when you're thinking of yourself.
Yes, it's always better to think more broadly about everything. You're right. If there's one thing that you think should happen in the field of art and dementia, is there one thing, or however many things, you think should happen?
I think it should be just have a automatic review for the desire to do art when you identify yourself as someone who is working with a disability. I think you should just be like the same as doing your review for blood pressure.
Wow.
It's a thing that's automatic. You get assessed for.
Wow, so it should be routine.
Yeah.
Doing art should be routine, and it should be routine as part of dementia management or disease management.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Well, nothing wrong with that brain as far as I can tell. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you so much again, Marie and Kevin, for putting that together. I can just tell from the reactions of the panelists back here that we're all smiling and nodding and kind of in agreement with what's been shared. And I'm sure that the video has also been well received by the viewers. I'll most definitely be circling back to both of you during the session a little bit later on, and look forward to hearing more from you soon. My next question will be for Sarah, and I believe we actually have an image of your book cover for Tangles. Can our tech team please make that visible now for the audience? Great, thank you. Now, Sarah, your graphic memoir Tangles, a story about Alzheimer's, My Mother and Me, has had international reach and impact. Can you tell our viewers a bit about the experiences with your mom and how those contributed to the development of your comic?
Yeah, sure. I'm just, it's a little bit unfair to have to go after the video. I'm so moved by what Kevin was saying about the power of art, and also just the art itself, just the colors and the shapes really kind of grabbed me. But yes, my experience with my mom. So my mom, actually, the anniversary of my mom's death is coming up next week. She died in 2004 on November 29th. So you want to know more about the experience with my mom?
Mm-hmm.
My mom, yeah, so my mom was diagnosed with dementia quite young. She was in her mid-50s, and she lived for about 6 years. And during that time, one of the ways that I kind of tried to make sense of what was happening was by drawing and writing in my journal. And I also just felt like I've always had a bad memory, which is stressful when you're worried that you're also going to get dementia. But I've just had a bad memory all my life. And I knew that if I didn't make notes about what was happening with my mom, then I wouldn't remember it. So I just kept a whole collection of notes and sketches. And then when she died, those gradually became tangles.
Yeah, that's it's interesting how sort of the writing and the drawing as you were experiencing something was used as a coping mechanism, has now turned into this beautiful comic book. And now that it's actually being transformed right into a feature length animation. So can you tell us a little bit about what that process has been like, where you're at in the process, and what you're hoping to get from that story moving forward?
Sure, yeah. So my mom died in 2000. So I just want to kind of give a sense, like all of this is stretched out over many years. So my mom died in 2004, and I finished Tangles in like 2008. And it was published in 2010, and then in a few different countries over the next few years. And then I started working with this really wonderful animation studio in Vancouver called Giant Ant. And they bought the film rights to Tangles. And we've been working on that project for about 10 years together. So we developed a script, which was an adaptation of the book. So the film is not going to be an exact depiction of Tangles. And then I think about 5 years ago, we started working with Point Grey Productions and Lilas Pictures, which is Seth Rogen and Lauren Miller Rogen, and they both have a very strong interest in activism and fundraising around Alzheimer's, and so their particular target is reaching a younger audience to raise awareness. And so they came on to the project and have been working on developing it with us, and we just now have another production company, Monarch, came on to kind of finalize financing. And then, so anyway, all these parts are moving together, and we should be starting production really soon. But yeah, we've been working together for 10 years. So it's slow, but hopefully exciting, and hopefully things happening soon.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. And again, to have your work evolve from a comic to the animation film, I feel like is just a testament to the value and the appreciation of your work. And once that film is done, I'm sure it'll be very gratifying for you as well after this process. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes, but my next question will be for Dalia. Dalia, I think you may be muted. There we go. You should be good now. I'll go ahead and ask the question that I have ready for you. So you have quite the resume when it comes to working in the field of art and dementia. And I understand that your work in this field started in part by working directly with a person living with dementia, and also by identifying a huge research gap in this field. So can you tell us a bit more about that and what got you started in this area of practice?
Well, I was trained in the field of design and architecture, and with the first economic, how to say that, disaster in Canada, where we all had to look for other sources of income. A friend of mine said that there is a woman in a long-term care facility who just moved from California to be close to her daughter, who was a teacher here in West Vancouver. If I would be ready to spend time with Ruth, an elderly lady with dementia, and what she called quality time. Just be there maybe a couple of times in a week, every time for 2 hours. And I arrived there, you know, she just wanted me to talk about just about anything, entertain Ruth a little bit, make her still think, laugh, do whatever we would like to do. And this time, I cannot believe it, that from this little thing for me at the time, the whole profession opened up. And I arrived there, I was like a blank page. I didn't know even dementia, Alzheimer was a difference. Is it the same thing? Where I didn't know a thing about it. I didn't know about memory issues, how she would react, what can I do? To make it short, the story, I had to do a lot of research for myself, because after several weeks, I ran out of how much can we talk? And I said, okay, I'm sure somebody already bumped into this situation of people with dementia, and let me find out what others were doing. Now, I'm talking about 1999, guys. This is a long time ago. And I was in a shock that I couldn't find, what I did find wasn't appropriate. It was very little. And of course, it was totally 100% the medical model. So I couldn't believe I was an outsider. I wasn't a healthcare giver. I never encountered elderly people with dementia or memory issues, because my parents had a memory sharp like an elephant. And so I couldn't believe, I said, how can it be that Dalia had to discover that there's hardly anything out there? It was really, for me, it was mind-boggling. And of course, being a curious person like me and stubborn, I started to research, and I said, okay, this is something I'm going back to school, because I always wanted to go back to school, whether do a PhD in architecture or going into law. My brain was all over, and that really focused me. This is something we need, it's important, and this is where I saw my role as not yet as a researcher. I wanted tangible things that I could, okay, which paper do you want to use? What scissors? Can you use scissors? Mm-hmm. How long should be the session? And so on. And this is how I started. Very innocently. It wasn't planned. It was just a coincidence.
That's incredible. Just the fact that you, and through your goal of trying to provide the best care for your client, identified this huge gap and then actually took all of the necessary steps to fill the gap. I find it very commendable. So thank you for all your work, and thank you also for sharing a little bit about the history behind your work. My next question will be for Sherry. So your work right now really focuses on culture change around dementia, and more specifically, your focus on how to use the arts to reduce stigma against dementia and raise awareness on this condition. Why do you think art projects are so important for changing public attitudes around dementia and dementia care compared to, say, an advertising campaign or a news article?
Interesting question, Melissa, and thank you again for inviting me to be part of this panel. I feel so very fortunate to be able to participate in this. And Kevin, your art is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to remember some of those images forever, I'm sure. When I became an academic, I found it very challenging, given that my focus was on changing the culture of care, to do that in the traditional ways that we do that in the academy, which is to publish our articles in journals that often professionals or people living with dementia or family members didn't have access to. And I also felt, coming from the arts myself, that it didn't move. Those kinds of ways that we share research doesn't really move people to action. So felt that it was really important to find different ways to translate my research in ways that would help people to experience what it's like to live with dementia in a different way, to move them emotionally, to actually we find that with the arts, they can move us in really sensual ways. We can see things happening, we can hear things happening, we can feel deeply, and it's through all of those things, as well as being able to place ourselves in the theater pieces that we create. We see that people actually talk about placing themselves in the scenes. And in that process, they critically reflect on their own role in making the experience of dementia what it is for other people living with dementia. So that prompts empathy, it prompts critical reflection, and it prompts people to change the way they interact with people living with dementia and their families. And we have seen it's prompt people in the healthcare sector to change their practices and policies associated with dementia. So I think the arts has the power to do all of that and to move us in ways that other things don't move us.
Yeah, I think what you've just described really depicts in words the power of art, and how our discourse and our thoughts and kind of like the way we regard dementia affects the way we frame it, and then consequently the way we treat people with dementia. So being exposed to art in that way, at least the way I perceive it, would kind of have a positive impact on that internal kind of discourse that we all have. So I've had a chance to hear from each of you. So I'd like to bring all of the speakers back on the screen for a little bit of a group discussion and roundtable before we get to the questions from the audience. So I want to touch upon a question that I'd like for each of you to answer. And that question is, what do you wish more people knew about the arts and dementia, or what do you wish would happen next in this field in Canada? So I'll flip it over to Kevin and Marie to answer the question first. I know that you touched a bit upon this in the video that we just saw, but if you can share anything else or answer those questions, it would be great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. As you can see, Kevin's in a bit of a Parkinson's freeze now, so he just asked me to help answer this question. So that's what I'd like to do. And such a privilege to be with Dalia and Dr. Dupuis and Sherry and Sarah. I bought your book, Sarah. Thank you. Looking forward to getting it delivered. So for Kevin and me, the primary realization is that every day art has given us purpose. And so whether it's an arts adventure or a sports adventure, as we know, purpose makes you get up in the morning. And I think that we fail to appreciate that, and maybe Brain Canada knows this, that neurology and art are absolutely flip sides of the same coin, because art stimulates the brain. And so what you have witnessed, and Kevin's works are, you can see more of them on his website, kevinwhitaker.art. And the ones behind us, the first painting here was proof in Santa Barbara. That's called The Dictator. It's the first large-scale painting Kevin ever painted. And we watched him come alive. And the people we were visiting with in Santa Barbara had never seen Kevin paint on this scale because it had never happened. And it transformed him in a moment. That was in February 2018. And so I witnessed the change, and with good doctors and new medical interventions for the past 5 years, Kevin has really been able to show the world that there's a connection between a sense of purpose, the arts, and a brain disease like Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. I'm not sure if that answered your question. Is there anything you'd like to say, honey?
No, I think that's good.
Is that okay?
That answers the question perfectly. And I think what you said about the transformation in the moment, personally, kind of, it moved me to hear you put it in that way. So thank you very much for sharing. Next, I'll go to Sherry to answer those same questions.
Yeah, I think that what I've learned from people living with dementia is that art is an essence of who we are as human beings. It's an essence of our humanity. It helps us to express our ways. I think Kevin actually expressed this so beautifully in the video. It allows us or gives us a space to express our ways, ourselves in ways that we wouldn't be able to express in other ways. I think the arts help us to connect and relate to each other in ways that don't require language, which can, and it can move us in ways that change us as human beings. So if I've learned anything from people with dementia, is that the arts are essential for us and our humanity and being human beings, and need to be supported more. They're horribly underfunded in this country, and they need to be funded to support our humanity as human beings.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I'd like to, I don't know, broaden it out to say that I wish that everybody felt that they were allowed to do art. So I say that as somebody who, I teach comics classes within a creative writing program. So I'm working with writers, and I do other workshops as well. And so often people have this incredible amount of stress about even just picking up a pen or a paintbrush. Like somehow you're not allowed to do art because, you know, like the cartoonist and creativity, I don't know, philosopher Linda Berry talks about how at around age 10, like some of us are just told, like, don't do art, you're not good. And I wish that we just all felt like we could do that. And also from my own experience as somebody who, you know, watching my mom have dementia, art was essential for me. And she had always drawn. And when she got sick, she very quickly lost the ability to even interact with a piece of paper. And that was really a huge loss for her and for us. And for myself, art has been a huge way of, my partner died a few years ago, and I couldn't have survived that without making art. So I just wish that all of us were making art all the time, you know? Even if you're scribbling on the back of a receipt, like whatever, just do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you said at the beginning of your answer kind of resonated with me a little bit, because I am one of those people that is scared to pick up a pencil or a paintbrush and just kind of do whatever in an artistic way. But I think, you know, just learning from all of you and learning about the topic of research and dementia a little bit more, it's, you know, there's no question that art is beneficial and powerful and kind of this, you know, like universal connector and communicator, as is kind of like a theme that I'm getting from everything we've discussed today. So thank you, Sarah. And then for the last last person to answer this question. Dalia, if you can share your thoughts on those two questions.
First of all, I agree 100% with the people who are sitting on the panel and watching what Kevin and Marie are saying and exhibiting. So I will add to that, okay? You ask what we would like to see happening more in Canada. And the thing is, it's not really only Canada, but nevertheless, since we are Canadians, let's talk about Canada, okay? I think, in which I think Sarah alluded to that anyone who works with the arts in plural, it can be whether it's creative writing, singing, dancing, flower arrangement, painting, whatever it is. These people, if they want to work and interact and facilitate with people or seniors, but I could say people living with dementia, which is correct to say, they should be allowed if they went through a short training, what to expect, how to interact, what to do, what not to do. But it also has to be, they don't have to have a PhD in caring, because we don't have enough people to interact with the thousands of people who are living with dementia. So I would say, let's broaden the scope. Who can interact? When I started in this field, you should have seen I was really persecuted, and I'm using it, from the Institute of the Institute of Music Therapy, the Institute of this, of art therapy, and I was already in a PhD program. They were actually contacting my own professors to dump me, because I am trying to understand what dementia is about without qualifications, previous qualifications. They wanted me to have a degree in psychology, nursing, medicine, social work. I mean, it was going on and on. I would have been 200 years old by the time I would have all those separate degrees. Excuse me, I came from architecture, which is not the regular way to get into this field, but I studied, and my soul is in the arts, and I do see myself as an artist, and I love older people because I never was raised with grandparents. They all perished in the Holocaust. So for me, everyone who looks old, I'm automatically attracted to. Never mind, later on I decide if this person is nice or not, but I have this personal need to interact with older people, and I don't care where they come from. Religion, origin doesn't even come into this consideration of mine. I will start considering their origin and their faith when I have to do a personal planning for that talks and touches their soul. Mm-hmm. This comes later. But so just to sum that point, we have to allow anyone who wants to interact and bring the arts in. Of course, we have to do a little bit of training, because not just because you want to work with someone who has dementia, and because you yourself as an artist, it's not enough. It's being an artist, a love of art, plus knowing what to do. Okay, and I'm really simplifying my thoughts. I'm not going into big words and so on. I'm capable of doing that too, but I was asked to simplify everything. The other thing is we must recognize art facilitators as an integral, important part of the care team. They are as important as a dietitian, as a psychologist on the team. We have to, because while we don't have a cure for, and I'm not calling it disease, I'm calling it medical condition, okay? While we don't have a cure for it, and I hope one day we will, what else is left if not the psychosocial appropriate approach to interact with these people? There are still people, there's still someone inside the condition,
of course,
with various abilities. So we have to have institutional recognition with these art facilitators, the long-term care facilitators, the long-term care facilities, and their administration must recognize it as a very important part of the care. Mm-hmm. Families need to know, and we can even bring them in to train them as well, because they are part of the world of these people who are living with dementia. Right. Now, when I started, the doctors looked at me as if I have dementia. Really. Nobody wanted to talk to me. They thought I'm a lunatic, fluffy. I'm talking about the arts. What arts has to do with dementia, right?
Dalia, is it okay if I interrupt? Because I want to echo a point that you made and that Kevin made. And it's about the institutionalized, the way we bring systemic change, and you have been in this system, trying to fight the system for a long time. And when Kevin at the very end of the video, and he said this again, talked about making art routine, it's no different. And I think if Alzheimer's Canada and other brain health organizations recognize the intersection between traditional medicine and other sectors like the arts and made it a prescription, in the same way that doctors are now prescribing walks and regular activities that are part of the healthy mind, healthy body. So a prescription for art is absolutely something within any family doctor or neurologist's bailiwick. And so when Kevin talked about making things routine, that's where the biggest and quickest changes can happen. As soon as someone says, hey, my doctor gave me a prescription to go to clay class. My doctor gave me a prescription to take up painting. My doctor gave me a prescription to go for a walk in the forest. So I'll end there.
Nice to hear you are saying it. I said it 20 years ago in all kinds of conferences, that a person with dementia, and by the way, it's creativity and creative arts and thinking and whatever they are, it's good for all of us, from cradle to the end. We need it, all of us, doesn't matter, but we need it even more when we develop dementia, because this is one of the ways to express ourselves and whatever is still we are able to do. But about 20 years ago, I said in one of the conferences, can you imagine me going to a doctor, complaining about my memory and everything, and he's writing a prescription saying 2 hours, 3 times a week, art activity, instead of 2 pills every 4 hours, whatever. And the audience were laughing hysterically. And those are people within the same, we were all the same people in the care industry, but they thought it's outrageous. A doctor, a medical doctor will prescribe 2 hours of dancing, for instance, okay? But
thank you so much. So sorry, Dalia, thank you so much. I feel like you have so much valuable insight and information to share, but I just wanted to flag that we're approaching the end of the hour, and I wanted to give an opportunity to have the audience send in their questions, either to address to the whole panel or to just one specific speaker. I know that we do have one question that's already been sent in for Kevin and Marie, and the question is specifically, Kevin, whether or not you knew how to paint before your diagnosis.
Yes, the answer is short yes. It wasn't something that I had, extremely well developed at that time, but I certainly was wanting every day to do some painting. That was sort of a goal of mine, and I was able to accomplish that at some point, which was very gratifying.
That's great. And I know Marie and Kevin, you're both avid art collectors. So I think even before the diagnosis, art was really kind of a standard or a constant in both of your lives. So actually, I have a kind of a follow-up question to that. Marie, how does it feel for you, just knowing that link for how Kevin used to enjoy painting before the diagnosis, how you both enjoy enjoy appreciating it together, and now to see sort of this undenying support and appreciation for the art that Kevin is actually painting? Like, how does that feel for you?
Well, once I wrapped my mind around the fact that he was the artist and I was no longer considered the artist in the family, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I had always been the person who would play with clay or dabble and paint, but I was a dabbler. And then when Kevin, as he always does, went into the act of painting seriously, I realized, okay, he's got talent. And then he got the disease. And I thought, okay, what's going to happen? So for me, it was an unexpected gift. It has given both of us a huge range of activities, planning shows. I mean, this is our 9th show. Did not expect to be doing 9 shows. It'll be a second film. The second film is focused on our caregiving relationship and how I, in particular, have been documenting Kevin's disease and what it's like to live with someone who has this disease. So it's given me purpose and joy. And I would not have expected this life. Kevin was in his 50s, much like your mom, Sarah, when he got the diagnosis, did not see it coming, shifted everything around. So huge sense of purpose and meaning. And sure, it's messy and there's times where we don't look so happy and shiny, but most of the time, it's given us a reason to get up every day.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We have another question in the Q&A box from the audience, and this one is directed to Sarah. So Jahane is wondering if you have any suggestions on where to start for a person who doesn't know how to draw or paint.
Yeah, sure. I think that really any kind of beginner art book that focuses on play and experimentation, I'll just type, I mentioned Linda Berry, and I'll just type the name of the book that I really like, which is What It Is. And so she's a cartoonist who's also, most of her work right now is just focused on encouraging art and creativity with people. I'm also always happy to send you more recommendations, but I think it doesn't necessarily matter exactly what book or class you go to, as long as the focus is on kind of being as open and playful as possible. And then through that experimentation and play, you'll gradually figure out what works for you and what kind of marks you want to make, and what kind of stories you want to tell. I hope that's not too vague, but What It Is has a lot of it's a combination of Linda Berry writing about her own experiences and also suggesting activities and exercises for the reader.
That's great. I personally love that question because they're tips that I can take into my life after this talk. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question from Terry, who is asking, I think this question could be directed to Dalia first, and then we could see if others have anything they want to add. But the question is, do you have any suggestions for how to encourage a group with dementia who insist that they are not interested in art, to essentially just try to get them all of the benefits of art?
Great question, because it happens all the time. You have those enthusiasts who would come and join you around the table and right away ready to do stuff. And those who are shy or those who don't want to participate at all, but they still want to be part of it. So there are ways how to do that. The quiet participants, you don't push, you don't force. They have the right to refuse you. They have the right to leave the room. They are human beings with their own wills and rights, even if they forgot the name of their husbands, okay, or children. They still have wants and desires, and so you have to respect that. So what I do, I usually ask the nurses to bring them to the edges of the room. You don't put them next to the table yet. But you watch them, you watch how their eyes are moving, their body language. If you try to see if there is a movement in wanting to be part of the group, and if not, they are still part of the group, but you don't enforce anything. It has to come in an organic way where they really want to participate no matter how. What I do, I put on the table a very rich source of art materials, colorful. So, it can be from tiny, shiny bits in little boxes to various papers and fabrics, and just name it, and paints and sponges if those who want to use sponges, and gloves if they don't use a pencil or a brush, and they don't want to make their fingers dirty, so they can have a glove. There are so many. If you are embedded in the art world, bring anything that they might want to use. And this is also including music, food. Yeah. Sherry talked about using all those senses, because one participant maybe doesn't hear anymore. Maybe many of them lost their sense of smell, which is very common, okay? Even sense of touch. As you get very old, sometimes you lose a sense of touch, dexterity. There's a lot of things that you need to know and you get to know your participants. I run the CEAA, what I call instrument. It's a diagnostic instrument to know what abilities still there. And I don't work on what they cannot do anymore, but what, in a very positive way, what they can still do. Let's work with what they can still do. And this tool, which I worked on with other two people, Hilary Lee in Australia and Dr. Peter Graff at UBC. And this tool really helps you concentrate on each person, what they can still do. Mm-hmm. And it's working. So once I have that, I also try very hard to understand where my participants are coming from. It's good to talk to their children or to their caregiver, talking to the nurse at the care facility. Now, I'm all the time saying care facility, but we have lots of people who live with dementia who are not in care facilities. They go to a daycare center, like in West Vancouver. They go for 3-4 hours, and then they go back home to their own house. So And then you have to be aware how long your session is. There are so many things to consider. But once you have all of that, you will feel confident and experiment. I'll tell you why. Because the next day, maybe the memory is gone and you can start all over again and fix all the mistakes you have done before. So
thank you.
I love being, I'm part of them. I don't look above them. I'm part of my clients, and I love being with them because they're very funny too.
Thank you so much for that, that answer. I just wanted to add that you have a lot of great publications that folks can find online if they're interested in learning more about that topic. And any of the questions that were sent in but haven't been answered, Alzheimer Society will address by email. We really have like less than a minute, and I really would just like to have Sherry share one more aspect about her experience before we conclude. So just quickly, I'm sorry to rush you, but I'd like to kind of get a sense of how you got to kind of where you are, because I think you had initially had a bachelor's degree in music before you now moved to this field of research in dementia.
Yeah, Melissa, I never, like Dalia, I never thought I'd work in long-term care. I knew nothing about it, and I finished a degree in music and had a visionary principal who offered me the opportunity to work in a long-term care home using my music to create educational and therapeutic programs for people living with dementia, and immediately connected through music with the people I was working with. So that changed my life. Yeah. I just want to say too that I think we think too narrowly about creativity. And certainly when we think about the arts, creativity is embedded in that. But we can be creative human beings in many different ways. And I have learned from people with dementia how incredibly creative they are in finding ways to adapt despite everything that they're experiencing with their dementia and memory loss and all other things. So we need to think, I think, more broadly about creativity and supporting people in being creative in whatever way that is embodied in them.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And thank you again to all of the panelists and viewers for your participation in today's talk. We're really at the end of the hour. I have just a couple of important pieces of information to share with you, and then I will let you all carry on with your day. But in case you're looking for a roundup of some tips around art and dementia, we've put a note about that in the chat. And the recording of this session will be posted to the Alzheimer Society of Canada's alzheimer.ca/talks page in the coming days. Please also be sure to follow both Alzheimer Society of Canada and Brain Canada on social media using the handle shared in the chat to get an alert for when that recording has been posted. And I'd also be remiss if I just didn't do a quick plug here, but we do encourage you to sign up to Brain Canada's monthly newsletter, and you can do so by accessing the links through the chat as well. Please keep an eye out for a survey that'll be sent to all of the attendees after today's talk. And don't forget to join us for our next talk on December 14th about family and dementia. Finally, any feedback about this event or the Dementia Talks Canada series can be sent to publications@alzheimer.ca. With that, I wish you all a great rest of your Wednesday, and thank you once again for joining us today.